After the heavy destruction of the swordsmith's village, the village has started to be relocated and rebuilt once again, knowing that the demons will come again. Despite the destruction caused by two upper-ranked demons, there is really not any chance to mourn knowing that they have to prepare for the future ahead of them. Because of safety and betterment, the base starts to be moved from its initial location, and Goto claims that they have already prepared a lot of empty villages for that. Despite Tanjiro's weakened state, he starts gulping down a bunch of food since he thinks of following Kenroji, making it look rather weird in this situation. On the other hand, Goto explains that Kenroji has slept for 3 days in total and ended up recovering like nothing even happened. Goto notices that Tanjiro is catching up to their level, bit by bit, and Goto doesn't bother much about his eating habits as long as he is fine. Then suddenly, he starts asking him about Nezuko as he previously heard of something shocking happening to her in the first place. As they know that Nezuko has been able to run around in the sun, Tanjiro still doesn't know what to do until the high-ups finish examining her to see if she is evolving as a demon or becoming a human once again. In the middle of the conversation, Tanjiro starts to eat even faster to avoid speaking with Goto for a while, which gets him concerned as Tanjiro surely looks like he would die choking on food. Then Goto asks Tanjiro about the whereabouts of his sister, and he mentions that the 3 shrimps may be busy playing with Nezuko for now since there are no core members in critical condition to look after in the first place. On the other hand, Zenitsu starts screaming his lungs out after seeing Nezuko and terrifies the girls like a creep, sweating and swearing. He starts to think that Nezuko might have been practicing speaking because of him, and the girls start to shut him down, saying that he should be somewhere else. But just when Zenitsu's interest is about to peak, and he thinks of marrying her while planning for the future, Nezuko welcomes him calling his name Inosuke, making Zenitsu rather annoyed. It seems that our guy Inosuke has been training Nezuko to say his name, and he has been working hard on that. On the other hand, another urgent meeting for the Hashiras was held at Yubayashiki Mansion because of the current situation. The Wind Hashira Sami is bothered by the fact that he is not able to fight any upper-ranked demons, and Obanai mentions that they cannot help but run into more of them anytime soon. Kenroji seems much better than before, and she loves to see that Obanai is concerned about her, and Muakairo on the other hand looks rather blemished and unable to say anything properly. Jayamai looks rather depressed by the fact that the whole Demon Slayer Corps will be in danger if it continues to go on like this, but he is glad that they have managed to deal with 2 upper ranks. At the same time, Kacho thinks that both Muakairo and Kenroji have healed in a rather short amount of time. Giyu thinks of getting the most reasonable answer from their master as they wait for his next instructions. Soon enough, Yubayashiki arrives in the mansion and lets them know that the master's sickness has been worsening this whole time, so he will no longer be able to appear in front of them. The whole demeanor of the scene changes in an instant, and Jayamai prays for the betterment of their master from the core of his heart. They begin the discussion about Nezuko, about her ability to withstand the sun, and claim that there is no way Muzan wouldn't come to take her away or harm her. Also, the marks on Kenroji and Muakairo have been noticed by the master as well, and they mention that the same kind of marks have appeared on the swordsman who nearly defeated Muzan Kibutsuji using first breathing. Even though it is all real, none of the Hashira seem to know about the whole story, and they wonder why it has been hidden this whole time. Since the Demon Slayer Corps have already been on the verge of extinction fighting over the marks, they have stopped talking about it in the first place. Then they come to the main course of the topic, and the person is Tanjiro Kamado, who still does not have the rank of Hashira. But even he doesn't know why his mark has appeared in the first place, and now they have 2 Hashira having awakening marks on them now. The master's messengers begin to ask Kenroji and Muakairo to teach them as well, but Kenroji doesn't seem to have any clear idea about any of it. As she begins to apologize, they realize that it has happened just like it happened to Tanjiro, as she didn't have any idea of it happening. But Muakairo, on the other hand, looks to have a clear idea why the marks appeared in the first place. When Muakairo begins to speak about the incident, he mentions how his whole body was poisoned, and he couldn't move, so he had to use breathing to slow his blood circulation. As the boy before him almost lost himself trying to save him, the shock of seeing him in despair returned a lot of his memories, so he couldn't literally control his emotions. Looking back at the incident, he thinks that his heart rate was most probably around more than 200 beats per minute, and his whole body felt like it was burning with temperatures over 39 degrees Celsius. None of them are able to believe how Muakairo managed to move in that state, as it would have been deadly for him. But the main thing about the marks is survival, which initially separates them from those who do not have the mark. Just when Muakairo mentions that he once faced the same situation at Kacho's mansion having a fever, none of them seem to know about it at all. When Sami thinks of the whole situation to be rather stupid and simple, Giyu mocks him for acting like an arrogant one. Kocho feels that the markings are really necessary for them to manifest right now, and Yaiba reassures them saying that he will make it happen no matter what. Before all that, and finishing up the meeting, Lady Aman mentions that for those who have already manifested the mark, it might be too late for the one who didn't manifest the mark in the first place. Once Aman and her people leave, Giyu thinks of leaving, and he doesn't think of involving himself with the 6 of them in any way. No matter what anyone starts spewing to make him slow down to have a conversation, he doesn't seem to listen to any of them, mentioning that he is not anything like them. Just when Sami is about to start the fight and instigate the whole situation, Kanroji stands between Giyu and him to calm the situation down, as fighting each other is the last thing to think of right now. At that moment, Yaiba loses his temper and claps his hands together to make them shut up and claims that he might have a proposal for them, so they have to sit and continue to have a discussion. On the other hand, Tanjiro seems to be better than before, and Hagenzuka has come to meet him while sweating and heavily breathing. Hagenzuka leaves the katana in Tanjiro's hands, and he realizes that he is holding Rengoku's hilt right now and thanks Hagenzuka for protecting Kotsu. As Hagenzuka sits, he starts to stutter saying blade, and when Tanjiro looks at it himself, he is rather surprised to see something like this in front of him, carrying the mark of kanji. Hagenzuka claims that the swordsmith who forged the katana made it to destroy the demons, so he added only a single character to the katana. Since the ranking system began later, the other swords now do not have the same character on them. Hagenzuka reveals that he wanted to bust his head for using the sword before it was fully polished and finished, and the sole reason why he is still weeping right now. Goju mentions that Tanjiro faced something rather similar as well, since all the bones in his body had been broken. Even in this sticky situation, Hagenzuka claims that Tanjiro will have to serve him a lifetime supply of Mitarashi Dango and leaves the mansion almost instantly. Goju thinks that Hagenzuka must be a feisty character, and Genya seems to have woken up after all the ruckus that was going on in the room. If the situation was not already shocking enough, Inosuke comes out of nowhere breaking through the windows. While Tanjiro is busy bickering with Inosuke, Genya thinks of having a separate room from them. But instead of caring about anything else, Inosuke keeps shouting that he has to be stronger than before, and the fact that they need to be in arms seems rather facilitating right now. Just after the discussion, a special training session began which is called the Pillar Training, and those who ranked lower than the Pillars trained with them one by one. Even though the Pillars would only train their successors, and no one else since they have a lot of things to do other than training. But Nezuko conquering the sun created a lot of buzz, as the demons had already stopped appearing, as if something was about to come for them. As the whole situation looks more like a calm before the storm, the Pillars only continue to train and patrol throughout the whole day. Zenitsu, on the other hand, looks like shit training the whole day and night, and he mentions that the secret trick to getting better is partnering up with someone stronger than yourself. But Tanjiro thinks otherwise, as he is rather adventurous when it comes to getting achievements and facing someone stronger. Since Zenitsu is not getting any help from Tanjiro, he starts biting the heck out of Tanjiro's forehead and leaves the room in pain, knowing that he is not about to help him. Just when Zenitsu is about to leave, Tanjiro becomes rather honest about what was going on when he was fighting the Upper Moon, and he even thanks Zenitsu for teaching him the lightning move which allowed him to fight back, even though he was not as fast as he was. When Tanjiro makes a face feeling that Zenitsu would be better now, he reminds Tanjiro saying that nothing will work on him like that, but he surely feels better than before. As he is gone, Tanjiro's crow whooshes and strikes his head since it has been carrying a letter for him the whole time. It seems that they have received a letter from Oyakata which is rather urgent to read, and Tanjiro wonders what it must be about. On the other hand, the pillar training has been rough as hell, and Yuzui Tengen is not leaving any chance for the juniors to even breathe. It seems that Yuzui does the initial hazing via basic stamina training, and when he wraps that up, Kanroji handles the harsh and hellish flexibility training, leaving the rest of it to Muakairo to deal with the quick movements training. Then Obanai handles the sword skill revision to master their sword skills, leaving the infinite pounding training to Seini and the rest of the muscle training to Jayamai, since he is the best one at that. Not only do the non-pillars get to prove themselves, but even the pillars have their chance to face a wave of swordsmen so they can do better. The whole reason why they are doing that is because they are focusing on the mark right now, and the others who have already gained the mark will also continue to train so they can be in the marked state. Even though everyone in the whole corps seems to be motivated, Giyu doesn't seem to have any kind of excitement, and he is sitting alone in his isolated house. When Tanjiro starts calling him from outside, Giyu feels rather shocked, as he was not expecting him to come into the house all of a sudden. Giyu claims that everyone is already training, and Tanjiro mentions that since he will be out in 7 days, he would like to get his help in that time. But Giyu directly rejects his proposition, and Tanjiro doesn't seem to know why Giyu has to be mad all of a sudden about everything. Giyu mentions that Tanjiro had to master the water breathing, and that was not successful, and Tanjiro apologizes to him about the whole situation going on. Just as Tanjiro keeps on blabbering about what has been going on, Giyu suddenly claims that someone has to claim the seat of the water pillar since the seat is vacant. Even though Tanjiro thinks that Giyu is the water pillar, he claims that he is not by rejecting the idea itself. As Giyu suddenly begins to move away from Tanjiro, Tanjiro remembers what Okayata told him, as he was thinking too much about Giyu and his mental situation, which is why he wanted Tanjiro to talk to him. But even after talking for hours with Giyu, Tanjiro couldn't bring any change into him, which felt like going on forever. Just when the 4th day ended, Giyu finally gave up, saying that he never actually passed the final selection, as in the Wisteria Flower Mountain one. Giyu claims that there was a boy named Subito whose family was annihilated by the demons, and he ended up going with him to the selection phase. Despite his capabilities and kindness, Subito was the only one who was killed that year, even though he had enough power to crush and defeat every demon on that very mountain. When Giyu was injured and attacked by a demon in the beginning, making him feel like he was about to fade consciousness, Subito came in to save him. After entrusting him to another boy, Subito moved on to save someone else, and when Giyu finally woke up, he realized that the selection was already over. Even though he was selected to survive the whole 7 days, Giyu knows that he couldn't even defeat a single demon in that selection, and now he thinks that he might not even be worthy of being the water pillar in the first place. After revealing the truth about his life, which makes Tanjiro tear up, Giyu begins to move on, saying that he must not ever gain the mark. Maybe Subito was the one who could have managed to do it. Giyu begins to take his leave, saying that someone like Tanjiro shouldn't be the one to waste his time with an incapable person like him. After hearing Giyu for a while, Tanjiro thinks that Giyu assumes his death would have made everything better, and the feeling of getting hurt is rather relatable to him. Knowing that your precious one died before protecting you breaks you, and the feeling makes someone feel as if someone has gouged flesh out of their body. For Giyu, Subito trained him in the Misty Mountains, which was a weird experience for him, and the 2 people who were already dead were the only ones who saved his life. Now, as Tanjiro looks back into the past, he realizes that if Subito was still alive, he might have been the same age as Giyu. The idea of saving everyone in the selection makes it rather surprising, as even though Tanjiro himself is rather capable, he couldn't think of doing the same, as he was busy saving himself in the selection in the first place. Knowing how Subito used to be, if he was still alive, he could even be able to be the biggest swordsman alive, which is why Giyu cannot accept the fact that someone like him died protecting him. Looking back, Tanjiro feels like he is feeling the same thing as Rengoku as well, since he risked his life to protect him and lost himself in the middle of it all. Thoughts that Giyu had about Subito were creeping inside Tanjiro's head as well, and assumed that maybe he would have been able to beat Muzan in the first place. No matter what, as Giyu is standing in front of him swaying further each second, Tanjiro is unable to wonder what to say to him to make him feel better and get him to a better position mentally. The fact that he knows nothing about Giyu makes it even harder, so he cannot be that compassionate with him no matter how much he tries. Then when Giyu is about to move further away from Tanjiro, he mentions that Subito has entrusted to him keeping themselves together till the end. The words coming out of Tanjiro's mouth start to creep into the memories of Subito in Giyu's mind. He remembers how Subito used to act whenever Giyu would mention things related to his death or something similar. Subito mentioned how his sister sacrificed her life in need because she wanted to protect him, so there is no way he would be willing to leave his hope this way all of a sudden, claiming it to be an insult to his sister. The slap that was left by Subito keeps ringing through his ears to this day, and Giyu subconsciously starts rubbing his face. Remembering the feeling once again, Giyu thinks back to the time when it happened and why he ended up forgetting it in the first place. Moreover, he just didn't want to remember it in the first place, and he apologized to his sister and Subito for being immature. Tanjiro, on the other hand, feels rather stingy seeing that Giyu is not even moving and wonders if he had done something rather mean to him which made him a statue. Just as the idea of an eating competition begins to creep in, Giyu finally breaks his silence, saying that he is sorry for delaying, and he will start training as soon as possible. Even so, Tanjiro mentions that they should have a cold sober contest for the old time's sake, which they eventually attend almost immediately. While Giyu is finally committed to training, Kacho seems rather nervous and shaky, and she mentions that she cannot be able to participate in the pillar training session, which makes Kanao rather confused. As Kanao is rather infused with eagerness to train with Kocho, she mentions that she now knows how to kill the demon who killed her sister Kane. On the other hand, Lady Tamiya receives a message from Yubayashiki Kage's crow, which managed to look through the identity of people to find out this particular location. As the crow begins to speak in a rather familiar way, she wonders if it is trying to deceive her as she is out of ideas as to why they might try something like this. As they wrap up speaking about Yushiro, the crow mentions that they need her help in completing their research, including looking into the changes within Nezuko. But the main target here is to defeat Muzan Kibutsuji, and the idea of entering the demon hunter's headquarters as a demon continues to roll around the corner of Tamo's head. As Tanjiro begins to participate in the training, he seems to be crushing the others with his willpower, and he is rather excited to finish it all. Even the old man Yuzui seems to be pleased with him for fighting with another upper moon after the first one. Just after wrapping up the first phase of the training, he manages to eat as much as possible to start moving forward to the next one in just 10 days. Then in the Muakiro residence, Tanjiro is better than everyone else, and people realize that he is faster than before and even smoother with all of his moves. Just after 5 days, Muakiro asks him to move forward to the next pillar, as he looks perfect in doing everything just fine like nothing else. But other than Tanjiro, no one else seems to have the permit to leave the residence, even though they have already been in the place for 2 to 3 weeks. Later at Kanroji's residence, she looks rather pleased to see Tanjiro, and she welcomes him inside her house rather warmly. Just after arriving in front of the residence, Tanjiro finds out that she must have honey and bees around the place, and she seems to be making honey to put on her bread. After feeding on the bread, butter, and honey, all of them move on to training in Kanroji's own style to see through the flexibility of the hunters. After wrapping up her training session, Tanjiro goes on to meet Obanai the Snake Pillar, and even though Tanjiro was thinking of having a positive vibe from him, it is quite the opposite here. Unlike Kanroji, he is not really nice as a person, and Tanjiro remembers that he has been hating him since the beginning of their journey. The whole residence looks like an execution ground, and Obanai has been tying up people to train with their swords while avoiding obstacles. Even though one would have to use the wooden swords, Tanjiro feels like the guys would be feeling the pain very badly in the training phase. As Tanjiro gets busy, Obanai starts swinging his sword in the middle to hurt Tanjiro, and he doesn't care if the people laid up as obstacles are hurt or not. The whole time Tanjiro thinks about how Obanai can bend his sword and the uttering moans of the people tied up on the logs. In the middle of everything, Tanjiro manages to wield his sword with an accuracy he has never dreamed of before. Just when he was able to slice off the Haori Obanai was wearing, the training was fully completed. Even till the end of it all, Obanai was jealous of Tanjiro and salty before he bid farewell to the man. Just when Tanjiro is about to reach for Shinazugawa's dojo, Zenitsu comes out of nowhere like a zombie as he manages to scare the shit out of Tanjiro. Just when he is busy crawling over Tanjiro like a lizard, Seinmi comes out of nowhere to grab the back of Zenitsu's head as he continues to scream. But nothing works out in the end, and Seinmi commands Tanjiro to carry him inside, and Tanjiro proposes the idea of working together with Zenitsu. When Seinmi acts rough, Tanjiro reminds him that he didn't forget what he did to Nezuko as well. Also, the training laid out by Seinmi looks rather hard compared to Obanai's one, and the fact that Seinmi is rather mad at Tanjiro reflects it pretty well. Just when Tanjiro is about to reach his own room covered in vomit and heartbroken, he hears Genya's voice trying to speak with Seinmi, his brother. But even in this time of despair, Seinmi is not willing to accept the fact that Genya and he are brothers for what happened in the past. As Seinmi warns Genya to talk to him as if they are rather familiar to each other, he also mentions that those who cannot use breaths have no right to be called swordsmen. Just when Genya is about to apologize to his brother, Seinmi moves away not caring about anything, so Genya mentions that he ate demons to fight. Just after hearing something so outrageous, Seinmi suddenly disappears in the air and Tanjiro whooshes in to save him before Seinmi's fingers are about to tear through Genya's eyes. As Tanjiro breaks through the wall to protect Genya, Zenitsu seems to have been in the backyard already crying for the painful training. Just when Zenitsu wonders why they are reacting like that, Seinmi starts to appear from behind the walls, making him feel like the old man has surely gone berserk, and there is no way they are about to survive withstanding his beating session. When Tanjiro questions Seinmi about what he is about to do, he mentions that he will have to leave him incapable of regenerating so he can quit the demon hunters, and that is the only way he will end up forgiving him. But no matter what, Tanjiro knows what Genya has been going through to fight the demons, and since he doesn't accept to be Genya's brother, he thinks that Seinmi shouldn't have any right to harm him in the first place. Even so, that doesn't stop Seimi from being Seimi as he thinks of incapacitating Tanjiro first, and Seimi's fist begins to pop through Tanjiro's stomach. But Tanjiro manages to pull through and deflect the attack, and he swings a backheel kick behind Seimi's neck, and the idea of Tanjiro managing to land a blow starts making Zenitsu react. Just at that time, Seimi begins to swing his legs around Tanjiro, and he feels like his ear has been cut by his kick like a tornado. Seeing that Tanjiro is not about to leave now, Seimi thinks of slaughtering him, and Zenitsu starts to hold Genya's hand to take him somewhere else. Zenitsu gets his ass kicked by Genya for talking shit about his brother, and the whole time chaos begins to ensue, turning into a mess around Seimi and Tanjiro. The situation led to Tanjiro being scolded by the higher-ups, and he was banned from even approaching Seimi, let alone train with him. Also, there is no way for him to keep the brotherly relationship between Seimi and Genya at this point. On the other hand, Tanjiro is frustrated seeing that the marker is not appearing on him. But Zenitsu looks satisfied since Tanjiro has managed to beat the shit out of Seimi, even for once, which makes it all better. Just as they start approaching the rock pillar's land, they notice a waterfall, and under the waterfall, Inosuke and many others are completing their training routine on the verge of falling off. At the same time, Giyu is busy training while carrying a huge pile of logs above his back, and the rocks are trying to keep him down. Even his feet are burning above the fire spreading under his feet, as if the man is trying to finish himself off. That way he welcomes Zenitsu and Tanjiro, and neither of them is ready to think of what is about to happen to them. The main task in this training is to fix the core of the body and stabilize the limbs, which will lead to accurate attacks and indefatigable defense. At first, they will have to train to have the waterfall beat them, which leads to carrying 3 logs on their shoulder, and then finally they will have to push the rock through a town. Even though the training looks rather straightforward, Giyu adds that he managed to remove the fire part from the training for the betterment. But Zenitsu is already unconsciously hearing about the facts, and Giyu adds that it will be better to throw him into the river then. Hearing Giyu talk, Zenitsu wakes up to enter the river, and he acts like he is never about to complete all the tasks in the eternity of his life. Just as someone mentions that the rocks are warm, Zenitsu does the same thing and realizes that the rocks are really warm. The whole waterfall training is rather hard, and Tanjiro realizes that Inosuke might be mentally frozen up inside because of the hardcore training. After reviving Inosuke, Tanjiro manages to train under the falls as well, and he keeps on chanting, knowing that the chants are typically done to keep someone conscious. The whole time he couldn't relax his body, knowing that his neck would snap if he loosened up even for a second. While Tanjiro is relaxing on the rock, the other guys mention that Tanjiro and Inosuke have done well, and he mentions that he has been stuck with a log training for a while now. As they start eating together, Inosuke mentions that he likes the rock pillar, and he claims that Giyu has to be the strongest demon hunter living right now. While they speak about the marker showing up on Giyu, Zenitsu claims that the old man must be joking about moving the boulder across the town only to poke them. Even Tanjiro is unable to convince him about that, and when Zenitsu really notices that Giyu can do something impossible, he shuts up. The idea of becoming something similar to him makes Tanjiro rather curious, and while Zenitsu is busy beating on Tanjiro, Inosuke prepares himself to look forward to his training. Just like that, one by one, Tanjiro manages to complete the waterfall and the log-carrying quest, and the only one he has left is the boulder pushing. No matter what he does, he is unable to move it, and he begins to speak to the other guys about their progression. Then even after 6 straight days, the rock does not move from its position, and Tanjiro gets rather dissatisfied only to lie down on the ground. At that moment, Genya comes around mentioning that the mark on his forehead has become bigger than before, and he claims that he has been worried about him the whole time. Even Genya has the same ultimatum of not approaching his brother, and Tanjiro kind of realizes why no one mentioned his marks getting bigger. Knowing that he doesn't have a mirror, Genya decides to leave one for Tanjiro and starts talking about repeating actions to move the rock. At that time, Genya mentions that Giyu sucks at teaching, so he will have to watch closely, and while they talk about the training phases, someone keeps watching them from afar. It seems that Nakaim's particles have pinpointed the location of almost 60% of the demon hunters, but she still hasn't found out about Nezuko after all. Muzan appreciates Nakaim for growing this much and pinpoints another location for her to track down. He surely hopes that he is about to find Nezuko soon enough to conquer the only weakness he has now. After hearing from Genya about the repetitive actions which opens all the 5 senses, Tanjiro feels like he might be able to focus fully to achieve something, even though he doesn't know the breathing techniques. Also, he finds a similar connection between Giyu and Genya as they think of using the force from their anger and painful memories, which makes their heart rate and temperature go up. but the fact that none of them have marks on them makes it rather confusing, so Tanjiro leaves the topic for now to focus on his work at hand, which he needs to complete as soon as possible. Just like that, Tanjiro gets on the grind, remembering the faces of his loved ones and recalling what Rengoku said before bidding the last farewell to them. Even though he couldn't make any sense of it in the beginning, Tanjiro was able to use all the strength he had by doing the repetitive actions, and after a number of times over and over again, his body began to remember the way to bring out that power through them. Just like that, he manages to finally complete the tasks mentioned by Giyu as Zenitsu and Inosuke continue to watch him from afar. But even when he realizes that he has finally moved it, he keeps on forcing himself to push it even more by using his legs, and Inosuke gets busy shouting tempera on his own. After some time, he manages to pull through his pains as well, and the boulder starts to move as he begins to crush himself through the memories of tasty food. Zenitsu realizes that both of his friends have met the requirements, except for him, and gets a letter from his bird at that point. When Tanjiro feels like he will lose in dehydration, Giyu comes out of nowhere and starts flowing water at his mouth while uttering the words he always does. But the guy keeps flowing the water in his mouth and ends up accepting Tanjiro's dedication in the end. As they begin to speak about the future, Tanjiro mentions that Nezuko was the one who made the choice, and he couldn't come to a decision and leave the villagers in danger. Despite the disagreement, Giyu feels like Tanjiro is different than everyone else, and Tanjiro thanks the man for teaching him for this whole time as he learned a lot from him. No matter what everyone says, Giyu mentions that he has fully accepted him, but Tanjiro doesn't get it at all. This makes Giyu reopen his past in front of Tanjiro once again, mentioning that he once raised some kids in a temple having a bond together despite having no blood relation. But one night, one of them managed to disobey the temple rules and didn't come back after the sunset and ended up facing a demon. In order to save himself, the kid managed to bring the demon into the temple and extinguished the wisteria incense so the demon could enter the temple. When 4 of the kids were killed, Giyu tried his best to protect the others, but none of them listened to his words as he couldn't shout. Also, the fact that he was blind was the nail in the coffin, and all the children who ran away except for the youngest one, Sayo, were killed mercilessly in the darkness. Because he had to protect Sayo with all the might in his body, he punched the living hell out of that demon, and if he didn't face the wrath that night, he might have lived his whole life not knowing his strength after all. He kept up until the sun came up, and he was heavily wounded, but he was glad that he managed to protect Sayo. But when people came, Sayo claimed that Giyu was the one who killed them all, breaking Jayami's heart as he did all to protect her. But he knew she was probably confused and frightened, so people misunderstood her words, and all he wanted was appreciation from her for saving her life. Nothing could have been done since the demon's corpse had vanished and turned into dust, and only the children's body remained, resulting in him being charged with murder. But Oyakata was the one who resuscitated him from that, and because of the past of his life, Giyu has the habit of not being able to trust someone. The fact that Tanjiro never ran away and stayed honest was able to make him accept his truth. Tanjiro promises that he will do his best, and as Giyu touches Tanjiro's head, he feels like he is seeing Sayo, thanking him. After that, Genya mentions that Giyu knows the truth about eating demons, but even so, he made him his disciple and introduced him to Kachu to check up on him. Despite everything, Genya knows that Kachu is disgusted by him as she looks at him, and Tanjiro thinks he must have been treated the same way if he couldn't be doing well with the breathing techniques. As Tanjiro mentions that he has to meet Giyu as soon as possible and asks Genya to come to Giyu, he claims that he has yet to move the boulder across the town, which makes Inosuke laugh as he grumbles about his food. As they manage to fight together for a while, Tanjiro mentions that he needs to talk to him about his brother Sanmi. On the other hand, when Tanjiro approaches Zenitsu, he is yet to move the boulder, and he is resting on the boulder for some reason. Even though Tanjiro wants to ask him what he is really going through, Zenitsu avoids it while looking like he is in a deep limbo, while blood continues to pour out of his head like a wave. As Tanjiro begins to walk away, he wonders if Zenitsu and his sister are okay, and while looking forward to meeting Giyu, he begins to move forward. When he comes close, he notices that Giyu and Sanmi are both fighting with all their might. And even though Giyu is about to lose his sword first, they end up losing both at the same time when he uses the piercing raindrop against Winter Gale. As they are about to fight with fists, Tanjiro runs in the middle saying that they must share Ohagi or something to make up instead. But as Tanjiro keeps disturbing him while speaking about Ohagi, Sanmi punches the heck out of Tanjiro. When Tanjiro gains consciousness, Giyu mentions that the guy has run off somewhere in rage. Also, none of them were fighting in spite, but they were training as pillars, which they always do. Instead of focusing on anything deep, Giyu thinks of sneaking some ohagi into some bag for Seimi so they can get along for the time being. On the other hand, Seimi listens to something tracing him and manages to find one of the eyes left by Nakheim, which keeps on taking notes on them. Just as he finds one of the eyes and crushes it, Muzan Kibutsuji has already reached the location of Yubayashiki Mansion to have a conversation with Yubayashiki. If you have liked the recap, do not forget to like and subscribe and let us know if you would like to watch the next part of the recap, Infinity Castle Arc. Also, ring the notification bell. As always, we will be back with another banger recap another day. Until then, peace out.